Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Managing Your Small Business Beyond the Pandemic webinar. This is number 75. Wow, let's have a party, okay? Well, maybe not, because it's about pandemic relief and we still have issues going on with this darn virus. But good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. And today we are joined by our special guest, Celeste Ramos, who we'll be introducing in a few minutes. Celeste Young-Ramos. And we will actually be going through a lot of stuff today. So let's get to it. What's up today? August the 18th, 2021. Well, where many of you really aren't that excited or it really doesn't apply to, the Shuttered Venue program is going through a lot of changes, including it will close tomorrow. So tomorrow will be your last day to get in applications. They are also going through a process, if you were denied a shuttered venue, that you might be able to go through a reconsideration process, as funds do remain available for this particular program. And since funds are available, they're going to help out those that are eligible and have received a shuttered venue grant with some supplemental funding. So the supplemental funding is coming along, and we'll touch on this a little bit as we move on. We talked a little bit last week about the Senate passing the infrastructure bill, and that is now residing at the House. Where that goes is important for a couple of reasons, because it affects two of our programs that are still available. That being the EIDL program, and also part of the EIDL program is the targeted EIDL program. And it also impacts not only that, but also your employer retention tax credit, as it would shave off the final 3 months of the year for that particular credit to pay for the infrastructure bill. So right now, the infrastructure bill is at the House of Representatives, where they're kind of going through a process of deciding whether to pass it or to wait until the Senate does work on a budget bill that would be passed only by the Democrats. So as we wait, we're kind of in limbo in those two areas, but for those particular programs, it's kind of made me dive into the nerdy side of the numbers on EIDL. And if I dive into the nerdy side of EIDL, that means you get to dive into the nerdy side of EIDL. So we're going to jump into that and try to figure out how much money is available in this EIDL program. So we will be jumping into a little bit of the EIDL numbers and looking at that. The California Relief Grant is back. Right now it is going through a process to where they are working with waitlisted, those that have been waitlisted in the past. So if you were waitlisted at one time, shape, or form and did not receive a California Relief Grant, even though you applied, then you could be getting an email from lindustry.com. So be checking for that. We'll touch on that a little bit more as we move on. We'll talk a little bit about the EIDL changes, the scoring tool that SBA has devised for reduction, to score reduction for those that receive the PPP2. So if you got a second helping, the PPP, the second draw, you needed to show and demonstrate, or if you were 150,000 or less, you needed to, at the time of forgiveness, show that that 25% was obtained. Now, some lenders, I'm told, actually came in and said, no, we want that at the beginning part of the process. But that 25% reduction tool, and that's scoring the reduction for those second draw individuals, SBA will waive that requirement if you are successful on their particular tool that is available. So we do have some more relief programs. We have your questions to go through today. What we'll have is the questions, put those in the Q&A box for both any of the pandemic programs and then any of the speaker-related programs. Hit the Q&A box. You'll find in the chat today that there'll be a lot of links that we go over today, places that we go and visit, and those links will be available through the chat and graciously put in there by our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang. So let's move on to the poll. Okay, so our question from last week that didn't quite get launched. And what it is right now going through with the pandemic and the pandemic rearing its ugly head, as we like to say. We want to know what your biggest fear is right now for being a business person, running a business, your biggest fear. So let's launch that poll. And your biggest fear is cash flow for your business, another slowdown or shutdown, finding employees, getting customers back, or something else. And if you put another, go to the chat and throw in there what you think is your biggest fear, because we really want to see it. And we'll touch base back on those later on. So we have your biggest fear being cash flow, another slowdown or shutdown, finding employees, getting customers back, or something else. So got about 68%, 70% of you are now in. So, and you're expressing your biggest fear right now. So I'll give you another second or two, and then we're going to end this poll and share the results. So with 72% of you now in, let's share these results. And the biggest fear right now is another slowdown or shutdown. 48% is the COVID Delta variant is reared, is kind of out there, isn't it? So 23% finding employees, 19% cash flow, 6% other, and only 3% of you getting customers back. That's great, as we've seen since we've opened up. A lot of you are really getting those customers back, so that's great to see. Okay, thank you for sharing that. And our next poll question is going to be, let's go back and do a couple of things. Let's have a pop quiz as part of our poll question. So if you heard the introduction, if you've heard the introduction to other webinars, we've talked about these mysterious 6 US territories in addition to the 50 states that SBA serves. So let's kind of launch this particular poll right now. And it is, which is not a US territory served by SBA? District of Columbia, the Northern Mariana Islands, French Guiana, or the Puerto Rico? The Puerto Rico, I like that. And guys are doing a pretty good job of mastering this particular poll question. I might have to be a little tougher on my next pop quiz question, but you guys are getting this one and nailing it. And there have been 46% of you that have voted at this time. Again, which is not a US territory served by the SBA. It's at DC, the Northern Mariana Islands. I guess not to be confused with the Southern Mariana Islands. French Guiana, Guyana, however you want to pronounce it, or Puerto Rico. And let's close the poll. We got about 55% of you that wanted to participate. So we're going to end that poll. We're going to share the results with you. And what you're going to see right there is nearly 4 out of 5 of the 80%. Close enough. French Guiana, that is correct. French Guiana, I would probably assume might be a territory of maybe France, but who knows? 13% of you had the District of Columbia. It has not been made a state yet, but there's talk. Northern Mariana Islands, 8% of you, and no one fell for the Puerto Rico question. So that maybe that'll change. So there's our US territories, and then one last little poll question that we're going to share with you and bring up here. And that is going to have to deal with, well, maybe it won't. Yes, it's fighting back with me. Okay. One last chance for poll question number 3. And there we go. And this one is going to be on idols in US territories, not the 50 states, of course, but what territory has the most idle loans. So, I get into my nerdy loan idle speak and numbers, and some things jump out at me, but who has the most idle loans? Is it the District of Columbia, the Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, or is it Puerto Rico? And got two that are running away with this thing. The top and the bottom are pinching off that middle. Nobody's buying Northern Mariana Islands. Nobody's buying Guam. They have it between DC and Puerto Rico. And we have 50% of you in. So last chance to get in. Come on, DC or Puerto Rico. What do you think? And that's it, 60% of you. So we're going to end the poll and share the results with you. And it's a dead heat, 50% of you DC, 50% of you Puerto Rico. And, which was a surprise to me, the winner was Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico by a substantial amount. And so that's it. Puerto Rico, as far as US territories claiming the most idols. Okay. Gotta love my worthless trivia questions at times, huh? Maybe we ought to get back on the music theme on some of those. But we're not, so let's actually go into our status in action items and kind of look and see what's going on here. So, as we mentioned, the $16 billion grants program is closing tomorrow on the supplemental. We don't know when employee retention tax credit. Officially right now it is 12/31, but there are provisions in the infrastructure bill that would actually end that at 9/30. Who knows? We might not know until 9/30. It's kind of the way some of this stuff is worked out. EIDL's open until the end of the year, but I wanted to know how much money is left in EIDL, because in addition to the employee retention tax credit, remember $30 billion is being taken from EIDL and also the EIDL Advance program. Family leave's open, and we're actually going to have probably a discussion on this in the next 2 weeks. I know you can't wait. California relief program, the PPP forgiveness is open. Bakersfield loan to grant program is still open. Contact Access Plus Capital, and a little bit on forgiveness for PPP 1 and 2 and other things. So that's kind of an update, a quick update on the stimulus related programs. So, let's do a new share here and kind of look at some of the other things that are kind of happening. And unfortunately, look, I'm talking about COVID again, and we haven't had this discussion. This is webinar number 75. It's been at least, I would say, 15 or so, maybe going back to 60. So maybe 3 or 4 months since we've been looking at numbers of COVID and hoping that it got better. And it's been getting worse. There's our map of the United States shared to us from the Wall Street Journal. We get over into California, and we see a number of different counties here. It's by county. So if you're looking at this US map and you're saying, hey, look at that, Nebraska, I should go to Nebraska. There's no COVID in Nebraska. COVID is in Nebraska. You see down here, they're no longer sharing county reports. But if you look at the very bottom there, 23 per 100,000 for all of Nebraska. So how does that trend to California? Well, in California, it's 32 per 100K. And we start looking at some of the other areas, such as Kern County right there. Kern County, California, 36. Start going up kind of through the San Joaquin Valley. The numbers get worse. Stanislaus, 52. San Joaquin County. So definitely a concern, and obviously a concern for you too, as you do not want another business slowdown. You don't want to see this trend continue where the daily reported COVID cases have risen 52% in the last 2 weeks. So looking at that is one thing. We can move on and now look at potentially maybe share, a little bit about what's happening locally in Kern County. And going here into Kern, kind of a concern as we continue to run into some of the issues that are coming up. And I know there's been a lot in the news today about a third vaccine that is available to those. But here's cases by vaccine status, something we've never looked at on Webinar Wednesday. So what this does is, since vaccines in January 21 in Kern County, which was the first day a resident in Kern was considered fully vaccinated, it has documented the cases by fully vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. So as you will see that on cases, 0.06%, that is 06, not 6%. So that is 204 cases out of 332,000 individuals who have been vaccinated in Kern County that have tested positive to the virus. Unvaccinated, the number is 99.19%. In hospitalizations, you see that number next. It's down to 0.004% compared to 99.14%. So I guess kind of a big number. It's something we've really never looked at, but really shows you the impact that the coronavirus is having on unvaccinated individuals. And hey, I'm not here to preach or plead. You know, 3 of my favorite women on the face of this earth are not vaccinated. I'm not here to make that statement. I'm just here because I'm a numbers guy and I like numbers. So that is what is interesting and something we haven't looked at in many, many, many weeks. Okay, moving on to my idle fascination recently. And you know, we've been downloading, and I believe our special guest last week, Andy Cito of the SBA, went through this SBA report, but it comes out every week. So we have a lot of documentation going back. And with that, you know, we also, and this is a copy of the most recent, or actually a report that was actually later on. So I just wanted to kind of show you, I'm not interested in what's going on state by state, et cetera, but here's what I'm interested in. Right here at the top is the loans approved and dollars approved. And this started me going in and looking, because I really can't look. When I look at the information, nobody's telling me how much money is available. I cannot find, as far as idle, how much money is available. But one thing I do know is that $30 billion from the infrastructure bill is taking it away. So I know we have numerous clients out there and maybe numerous attendees on the webinar that are going through an increase in idle. Maybe you're going through your first idle and are having problems getting that through, or you're still having problems getting your idle loan approved and are at reconsideration. So kind of looking at that information, it prompted me to kind of go in and do an analysis. And you know me and my Excel, I tend to nerd out, and a full functional case of geeking out on idle numbers happened to me this week. So whereas I'm sure this looks like a train wreck with all these numbers, let me try to explain what I found. And here's what I found, is I found by going through the weekly numbers that provided me the number of idle loans over here in the C column that I'm kind of going through for specific dates, and the last report was last Wednesday. So I get the number of cases. I can see how many cases that week changed, okay? So here's the changes or the new idle loans that were made. They also provide me the loan amount. So here's the loan amount numbers. Disregard these percentages for now. So I'm looking at these dates. I'm looking at these number of idle loans, which going back, you know, to May 13th was 3.7 million, almost 3.8, and now is up over 3.8 million. And here's the dollar amounts, because I really want to understand more about this report. So here's what I've learned by doing this analysis. I've learned that, number one, here's the amount of monies that increased. Here's the amount of new idle loans that were made. And here's, if you divide those two out, here's what it's telling you, that if it was just an idle loan, let's go up here to this top week, which was last week. So what we had is we had this many new idle loans, 2,309. And this was the amount of idle dollars that went out. Obviously, with an average loan of 3.5 million, that tells us, since the maximum is only 500,000 right now, that a ton of that money is going for reconsiderations or increases in idles, okay? Going way back here to the very first week when this program started, it was much smaller. There were new idles that were happening. So what this is saying is it's saying that there's a number of dollars that are not being created by new loans. And they're still subjected to the $500,000 limit. And that's telling us that there are a substantial amount of monies that are now going for increases in idles. So this has at least given us a number of $3.5, almost $4 billion a week that is going away, and kind of shows us the need for, if you want to get involved with the idle, or you want a larger idle, you want to increase your idle loan, or if you haven't got one and you want to get one. Right now, still the limit is $500,000, and that is kind of what is going on there. Okay, I know it's a lot of numbers, but what it is it's telling us a story, and it's telling us that idle loans are increasing each week, or at least have over the last 3. And idle dollars going out are substantial. So they're going to those people who are getting increases. So if you have an increase pending, we're real hopeful that that continues, on and continues doing what we've seen. And just so we are talking a little bit about idle, and a lot about idle. And so the reconsiderations are one thing, and there's a lot of changes that have happened in this particular year. So what are the things that are happening with idle? Well, some of the big things is the increase from 150 to 500,000 that we just talked about. Early in the year, the program was extended to the end of the year. And again, the infrastructure bill takes over 30 billion. I'm assuming that what happened at SBA was they sat down and they said, hey, how much money do you need based on current projections for the rest of the year? And they gave them a number. Hopefully they applied a cushion, and then they said, hey, we have $30 billion left. Let's use it in the infrastructure bill. So just need to know that if you want to do an idle increase, I would recommend it happening very, very quickly. Again, if you had an idle loan that is less than 500,000, based on underwriting criteria of SBA, they can be increased. It was announced that they were potentially looking at $2 million. I think now that with that money going away, it's probably not likely. And we're starting to see, and have seen over the last few weeks, an improved customer experience with the idle program. So they are working on the backlog. So if you are waiting for news on either the targeted, supplemental, or idle increase, or an idle loan, and you haven't got your resolution or final answer yet, it could be coming soon. So there's that $31 billion, that came out of the infrastructure bill. And we did mention it affects also the employee retention tax credit by ending that program on September 30th. The timeline for forgiveness for PPP, people are starting to get invoices if they haven't had their first loan. And let's say you applied early in the process at 2020, your 24 weeks covered period and 10-week window are now ending. You can still get full forgiveness, but you are going to start getting a bill from SBA on that. So you really need to work on that if that's a particular issue that you haven't resolved at this time with your lender. And remember, PPP forgiveness starts with your lender. There's the new portal that is open, direct forgiveness. And right now, almost 1,200 of the 5,500 lenders across the country are signed up. Not that many in our local area. We did find another one. Fresno First Bank is on the list. And thank you for one of our clients for pointing that out and notifying me this week. So we have The COVID reduction score and direct forgiveness, if your lender is not involved in the direct forgiveness, regardless, you can still go through the COVID revenue reduction score and may not have to provide evidence that your gross sales from 2020 were reduced by more than 25% in any quarter for 2019. And there's the reduction score. We'll have more on the California Relief Grant next week, as there is going to be an opening up period. Right now through September 16th, they have added $1.5 billion to the program, and it is moving forward. Access Plus Capital has this small program that you can get by with a minimal credit score of 550. The Nano program is available. Contact Access Plus Capital. And now on to our special guest today. And it is a pleasure to have back Celeste Young-Ramos. She's the founder of the Restaurant Success Center, which is a restaurant and human resource consulting firm providing restaurant owners and managers the skills needed to grow, maximize profits, and develop highly satisfied customers and employees. Being a unique background that Celeste has in HR and restaurants, you know, it's great that she's back now to talk about the HR side of things with the virus kind of popping back. But also she can talk about some of the things that she's seen with restaurants based on her experience with over 20 years as a franchise director and in HR with a big, large chain. She's a graduate of Brigham Young University. Celeste, welcome back. It's great to have you here. Take it away. One thing I might add why Celeste is bringing this up, you gave me 1 second, that's all I need, is Maureen's going to put up a link from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO, who will be joining us in a few weeks. But they did a brilliant, absolutely, I think, marvelous thing on restaurant trademarks, a 2-hour webinar that I haven't got through, but I've gone through it, and it has some great information on trademarks for you restaurants out there. Give me a second, Celeste, and I will fill it. So Celeste, take.
Helps if I unmute myself. Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to talk about HR updates in the post-COVID-19 workplace. And I guess we're not totally through COVID, but we're hopefully making some progress through it. So Kelly already did my introduction today. I am a restaurant and human resources advisor. And today I wanted to talk about the state of the workplace in regards to unemployment. We'll talk about hiring and retention strategies, some things you may need to be aware of if you are rehiring employees that you're going to bring back that have worked for you previously. I'll talk briefly about mask and vaccine policies and also a couple California government COVID-19 requirements. So first off, just some kind of statistics. In January, the Bureau of Labor Statistics announced the turnover rate for the hospitality industry reached a whopping 130.7% in 2020, compared to 78.9% in 2019. So that's about a 45% increase in turnover compared to pre-COVID times. These numbers are also very consistent with the retail industry and the 3 industries across the country that have been the most impacted by COVID are hospitality, retail, and airlines. So, and you can go to the Department of Labor Statistics and look up your specific industry as well if you're curious. They'll give you kind of some information about what they foresee for your industry during the next year. During this time, many restaurant and retail workers moved to other industries to find more stable employment, and businesses look to fill vacant positions. So this gave the opportunity for some of our employees to move to different industries where they were not previously considered. And some of those other industries have also loosened some of their hiring guidelines because they needed to have bodies in the jobs. So some of our workers may have moved up into these industries that may be paying more and have more of a stable, consistent retention because there's not a lot of flexibility maybe in the seasons or with the COVID-19 closures. So that has been having an impact on the restaurant and retail industries. Also, an estimated 68% of unemployed workers are collecting more on unemployment than earned while working. And that is the common theme that I hear restaurant and retail owners telling me is that, you know, I was paying people a couple $100 a week for some of these part-time positions, and now they're, you know, making $300 to $500 a month, a week. And so there isn't a lot of incentive for them to actually come back to work. But the additional $300 COVID supplement will be ending on September 5th. So as of September 6th, it will no longer be in place. And the other issue that's been impacting getting people back to work as well is that schools are starting back. I just saw in my neighborhood that yesterday kids were all loading up at the school. So that's going to also now allow a lot of workers that were staying home to take care of the children to now be coming out looking for work. So since this is going to be ending here the first week of September, it's viewed that we'll probably see a larger influx of people coming out now to look for work. We've only got about 3 weeks left. So they'll want to have something in place when that supplement ends. So we should be seeing an increase, although we will still be experiencing shortages through 2021 and perhaps beyond. Some companies have decided to change doing teleworking now for some industries. Some companies have moved to some automations, so some workers may not be needed. So we should be seeing some relief anyway on the close horizon for the hiring. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the hiring mindset in your workplace because it's really impacted by 3 different groups. And one of them is the management mindset. We have the applicant mindset about getting hired, and we have the employee mindset of the people that are already inside of our 4 walls, which can have an impact on the whole process. So for the management perspective, things that I'm hearing is it's difficult to find good staff. I want to hire, but I'm financially drained. I've heard some have come through asking, you know, how do I get a loan? I need to get a loan. And with that loan, I'm going to hire more people. They may make me close again. And that is a big fear that we do have is that we may see maybe a 3rd closure if we continue to have such high spikes in COVID-19. And employees are making more staying at home. So that's something we all know, and you know that frustrates us for sure. The next one was the applicants. So with the applicants, what we're hearing is, I'm afraid to work due to COVID-19. You know, many people have spoke to me and said, well, you know, we have a very multi-generational family. We have very small children under 12 that can't be vaccinated. We have senior citizens in our homes living with us as well. And you know, having the vaccine is not 100% protection at this point from COVID-19. There have been people that are in the hospital, about 10% that are vaccinated have had reinfections. So some are also afraid of the vaccine. They fear of misinformation, or that this hasn't been approved yet, or they just have religious or other beliefs about that. Also, they're also saying I'm making more money on employment, and they also fear that if I get brought back and there's another drawback and restriction, then I may get laid off again, and it takes an exceptionally long time to get my benefits reinstated. And the other message is everyone's hiring, and I can be very selective. And everywhere you turn on the television, that's all they're reporting is how there's a shortage of applicants. And we're seeing gigantic sign-on bonuses. I was watching one yesterday for a steel company. Oh, they were actually doing a bonus for vaccinations. They were saying if 75% of the staff got vaccinated, I think they have a deadline of this next Friday, they were going to give each employee in the steel mill a $1,500 bonus. And if they 85% hit, they were going to give them a $3,000 bonus. So some companies that have a lot of bucks behind them are using a lot of different strategies, trying to, put in place things that may protect their employees from infection or reinfection. And then we have our employees who we don't always think play into the factor, but they can have a big impact. So there's going to be some that are very supportive that, yay, help is on the way. And I'm going to get more hands here because I've been cross-trained to do so many different jobs. And I want to get back to the old way. There's others that are going to be kind of, new people again. I'm tired of retraining everyone and having to get to know these new people. And then you also have, is it going to be safe working with these new people? And lastly, there are going to be even a part of your workforce that you currently have that say, I make more without the new people. So we have been giving some employees more hours, maybe even paying them overtime so that we can fill all the hours that we have in need. Or, they're able to, if they're in service industry, they may be getting a larger station to compensate for not having as many servers in business. So there can be some that may be even trying to sabotage your hiring efforts. So I think, you need to look at all of these areas, and we need to accept that these are the mindsets, but don't let them block us and give up in our hiring process. The sweet spot is where they all convene right in the center, where we can get our mindset and the resources we have meeting the needs of the new people that are looking for work, and also meeting the needs of the employees. That's going to be the sweet spot where we have good hiring and also are able to have great retention. But you do need to focus on the culture of your company, because in today's present labor crisis, workers know they can leave and get multiple job offers. There is even less tolerance for bad bosses and negative working conditions. And that was something that I noticed even before COVID, was that as we bring people on, we may get someone through the door and get them hired today, and we think, oh, great, our problem is solved, and we start going about our day. But employees are really still interviewing even after they get a job with us. They may take the first job that offers them some dollars, but they've put their applications out at many places. And if another one comes along where things look better, they don't have any attachment to you, and they're going to go ahead and jump. So you really need to look at how can if I do hire someone, how can I get them immediately integrated into the system? I know I had one restaurant that I helped support. It was in a very high income, in Santa Barbara, in fact. Very high income area, hard to find workers. We were having excessive turnover. In a 3-month period, we were turning over 15 employees. So every employee we would turn over was like $1,500 lost. And I realized, like, if we didn't make a change, that could hit our bottom line for about $88,000 a year, along with the potential of losing management, because as there's lots of employee turnover, management also has to pick up the slack and sometimes pick up those employee jobs in addition to their own. And sometimes they end up jumping ship when there's a lot of turnover. So we really looked and had to delve into our practices to try to improve that situation. And one of them that we had the most success is that once we brought people in, we needed to get them into the fold and make them feel extremely welcome. And so that they could bond with us. And then even if someone was offering them more money, they may say, well, you know, the conditions are good here. I like the hours. I like the people. I like the boss. I think I'll stay here, because grass isn't always greener on the other side. It may temporarily look that way, but sometimes the conditions aren't great. So what we did is we buddied every new person up with a mentor who was someone that had kind of similar interests, similar ages if possible. And so they had this close connection. Sometimes it could have been their trainer, but additionally, we gave them another buddy as well. And it was their job to touch base with those people every day they worked with them. They would help teach them the ropes, help let them vent if they were, frustrated. And sometimes they would let us know that people were frustrated and we could step in as well. We also tried to find ways to bring the people's families into the business. So like with a restaurant, it's easier because I can bring their family in to eat, treat them very specially for, like 20% on the dollar. And so then the family got to know us and put a face to the names that they hear, and they felt that it created a stronger tie there. And that even helped when we got to holidays when it was really busy. So I really encourage you to look and see, is there ways that you can recognize them and introduce them? We used to have a conversation board where we'd write down some of a new person's name, put their picture up, and write down some of their favorite hobbies and things. So that way, when they met new people in the workplace, they could have a conversation starter. So as you're looking at your hiring now, I'm finding a lot of people, when I ask, well, do you have a help wanted sign up? I would say 60% of the people that I ask say no. So I think you need to get back to the basics and look at those things. Make sure that the help wanted signs look attractive, that people would want to come in, have smiling employees on there. I would say look at the big leaders in your industry and see how they're marketing their employees right now, because they've spent a lot of money and effort on it. I would use some of their ideas. Notify your staff about all the positions, put it on social media. You could set up a referral program, and then post it in more locations. There are a lot of free websites that you can post hiring on. If you'd like to shoot me an email or put your email, private message me here, I can send you some of those informations. You also should review your wages. We're finding that there has been an increase in wages because people are, wanting more because they know that you're desperate. And so you may need to do a reevaluation of the wages in your area. And with that, we have to pass that along to the consumer to some degree. So you may need to also raise your prices. And we've seen that reflected everywhere you go, from shopping to eating, that we're paying more to enjoy those services. You can also look at a sign-on bonus for new hires. Say they stay on for six months, or you can give them additional boost. You just have to kind of look at your budget and see what's available, and then figure out what your retention plan is, because that's going to be as important as your hiring plan. And some people I've talked to, they say, well, we're trying to hire slower. It's like, no, right now you need to be hiring quicker. Like if your process normally takes 2.5 weeks to get someone through the interview process and background checks and everything, you really need to make that much shorter, because your people are going to be looking for other jobs. And now that they can post jobs on the internet, it's just like when you go shopping. If you can't get a response quickly, you just move on to the next retailer. So they have the kind of the same mindset with that. Now, if you are going to be rehiring people, there are a few things we want to bring to your attention. So one thing is you cannot use the same paperwork and hiring packet that they signed when they worked with you before. Legally, you need to start a whole new package, because you're hiring them now as a new employee. And talked to many legal experts, and they said that the old policies may not apply. So make sure you start with a new rehiring file. Also, you can reuse the Form I-9 if they're rehired within a year. There's a place in Section C where you can go back and just put their rehire date on there. There has been a new update to the Form I-9 that many are not aware of. The new one should now say October 31st, 2022. So just check up on the right-hand corner. You don't want to be rehiring people with a form that's outdated. That'll cause you many violations. Also, if you're bringing them back within the year, you need to reinstate any state or local unused sick leave. So when you terminated them, you aren't required to pay out unused sick leave, but you do need to look back on the books and see what had not been used, and make sure you reinstate that into their account. And sick leave should be appearing on the California paychecks, as well as if you have any supplemental paid sick leave, which I'll talk about for COVID-19. All of those things need to be distinctly listed on your paychecks. And lastly, if you had employees that did have health benefits because they were covered under the ACA, or perhaps your company offered them even though you may not have been such a large size, if they come back within 3 months of their termination, you do have to reinstate their benefits. So we just want to make sure that we don't forget about these steps. Also, Cal OSHA is requiring that you have a COVID-19 plan. So many health departments throughout the country, throughout California, had what they called like appendixes. LA County had an appendix that you had to post that listed how you were going to handle, people had to wear masks, and they had to have signs posted, and you had to have social distancing, and you had to have a check-in with people checking you in to check your symptoms. So some of you may already have those types of plans prepared. I've found like a lot of health departments have said, well, they don't need to be in place. However, I still feel with the high increase in COVID situations that we have had, that we still need to have some type of check-in when people come in to verify that they don't have symptoms, because we don't want to have a reinfection of even the people that are vaccinated, because that is a potential. So if you've abandoned that procedure, I would highly recommend that you put that in. As we saw from our survey, I think it was like 60% are worried about, a closure. And a part of that is I talk to people every day that they worry that they're going to have to close down just because, a positivity test. And I know many owners that have closed a couple times in the restaurant industry because of COVID infections inside the restaurant. So I think we need to really be just as vigilant now as we were prior to the restriction lifts, because it's not over yet, and it could have a serious impact on us going forward. So Cal OSHA requires that every business have a written COVID-19 policy. And in that policy, I bullet pointed a few of the items they suggest. One is how you're going to safeguard your employees. So that could be your check-in, asking people to wear masks, requiring some social distancing, how frequently things are sanitized. I wouldn't allow employees to be sharing food at this time. We still need to follow those rules. So I would keep as many pre-policies in place. They suggest that you have your mask policy written, your vaccine policy written, and also procedural steps, what to do if an employee tests positive. There's different scenarios depending on whether people are vaccinated or not. And then also having a comment about non-discrimination, that you're not going to discriminate against people because of their vaccination designation. And I really think, as working in several places, I have the opportunity to come into one workplace on a regular basis, and half the employees are vaccinated, half the employees are not. I know there's a lot of insecurity from both sides about whether, should I be near this person or not near this person, or hey, they're not wearing a mask. We've had reports of some people being very harsh and even acting discriminatory as employees toward others because of their vaccination status. And I think you really need to set the tone in your business and let everybody know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And you may have your own personal beliefs in regards to the vaccination, pro or con, but you definitely need to make sure that that you're being fair and consistent with everyone, and that we're not calling out in public certain people because of their status and things like that, because it could raise some legal issues for you. So Cal OSHA's guidance in regards to masks, they've combined it with in accordance with the California Department of Public Health and the Department of Industrial Relations. Right now, they're stating that outdoors, no masks are required. However, indoors, no masks are required for the fully vaccinated. However, there is a recommendation that they still continue to wear the mask. And all unvaccinated are required to wear a mask indoors. They also say that whether you're indoors or outdoors, if you can't keep a 6-foot distancing, that they would even recommend masks be worn in both situations, whether you're vaccinated or not. They also have a ruling that the employer must make N95 masks available to the employees. Before, they didn't require N95, but with the new rulings, they have moved it up to that level of mask. And then with the vaccine policy, so you need to decide what your policy is, and make sure that you notify all of your staff in regards to that. So the guidance provides that an employer may require employees to receive a FDA-approved vaccination against COVID so long as the employer, and this is coming from the Department of Employment and Fair Housing. So they're saying you can require that all your employees have a FDA-approved vaccination, as long as you don't discriminate or harass employees or job applicants on the basis of a protected characteristic, and also that you make reasonable accommodations. So you may have some people that have a disability that their doctors say, taking this vaccine may affect our treatment, or, it won't work for them, or there may be some that have religious beliefs. So if that happens, you need to ask them to give you a written request for an accommodation and what they feel the accommodation should be, and have an interactive conversation to see if you're able to make that accommodation. One might be that they are moved, they have hours available at a different shift where they can be maybe more separated if necessary. And also with the mask, some people may not be able to wear a mask, but they can wear like one that doesn't cover the mouth but hangs down, more like a kerchief type situation. So those types of masks may also be used. And you just got to be careful that you don't retaliate against anyone for engaging in a protected activity, such as requesting a reasonable accommodation or alleging discriminatory practices. That kind of goes no matter what the situation is. You don't want to retaliate. But if you do need support with that, you can always look toward legal counsel or an HR advisor to help you look at your individual situation. And lastly, there is a COVID-19 supplemental paid sick leave in place. This was part of the Appropriations Act that came out in January. And this will impact businesses with 26 or more employees. If you have employees that need to be out for COVID-related self-care or care for a close family member or someone in their immediate house, so either you're going to get a vaccine, that should be covered during these hours, or you've asked them not to come to work while they're waiting for a test, or you've asked them to quarantine because there has been positivity and they're not vaccinated. All of those situations, they would be able to get some supplemental paid sick leave, as well as if they're taking care of someone, a close relative in the family. So, and this will also cover some time for school closures. So with school coming back, some of that may be relieved from this, and people might have already used this time up. So if you're full-time employees, they get up to 80 hours. For part-time, they get the average of the last 14-day period, and they'll get paid 100% wage. So with a maximum of $533 per day, or $5,100 over the period. So this time period that this paid supplemental sick leave is in place is January 1st, 2021, all the way to September 30th, 2021. Now, employees can go back, because this wasn't passed until March. They can go back and ask for retro pay for those time periods if you didn't pay them during those times. They can also go back and ask for it if you did not provide the California COVID sick leave that ended in December 31st. They can take that all the way back to March 30th. Now, those hours that you pay out will be paid by the government as part of a tax credit that you'll put on your quarterly tax returns. It's a credit out of Social Security wages that you collect. And in addition, if you don't have enough to cover these hours that they're out, you can fill in IRS Form 7200 and request the payment separate. And it takes about 3 weeks for the money to come in. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be open to take those now. And here is my contact information. So if you need any help with like creating your COVID-19 policy, or you want to talk about anything related to that, you can always contact me at any of these contact numbers. So Kelly, do we have any questions?
We do.
All right.
Fantastic as always, Celeste. I appreciate you coming on today.
Yes.
Okay, the questions here, and I'm reading off of, these were received by email. So,
okay.
And they have to do with signing or employment bonuses. If you're offering a bonus to come to work, when and how to pay? Can you pay a half of it in 30 days or incremental afterwards? Is there any requirement on that?
There really isn't any like state legislation or rulings on when you have to do it. But you do need to have it in a written plan. So when you make your offer to them, you should always like make a conditional job offer in California. Tell them that this is the offer that we're making for you, and then we're going to check your background. And if you meet your background, then we'll bring you on. And you just want to make sure you state like exactly how much you're going to be giving them and at what increments. And then, let them know, like, if it'll go through if you stay by this date, and you'll be paid out by this following date, so many days after that. So that's really all it is. You just need to make sure it's stated.
Are there any time commitments to that for the employee to be remain? So can you have limitations saying you have to work for 6 months, or any of the conditions like that?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have my video on. Yeah, you can state that they have to be with you for a certain period. You could state that they have to have a good performance level even. It's all whatever you feel is like the requirement. Just like you would make a regular bonus program, you may have some stipulations in there. They just have to be written out.
Should there be a contract, and should it be in writing?
Yes, it always should be in writing. So you should write down the details of how that'll work, and then I would have them sign it, and you sign it and retain a copy for proof.
And lastly,
and also when you have your paycheck stub, is whenever you have a different type of pay, like the supplemental sick leave, or the California sick leave rule, or you're paying someone and they didn't get a break. I would have like sign-on bonus pay. They always have to be differentiated with a different line. It can't just all be grouped into regular pay. It needs to have its own line item. So separate it out so you can easily see it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think you mentioned that last time also, the requirements of the paycheck and what employers are running into so many issues with that with the state of California.
It becomes a big issue with the PAGA, or Private Attorney General Act lawsuits. And each week that you have it incorrect, or each pay period, it could be like $100 fine per employee. And if you do it wrong with every employee, it can really rack up a lot of money. So I would definitely look at that. And if you want to get in touch with the SBDC for more information or contact us, we'll be glad to help you with that.
Great. Are there any pros and cons in dealing with the signing employment bonus?
It's like a lot of it, if you put the time frame too long, it might not be a good incentive. Some companies are giving it right away, like they give part of it right away, and then they wait, say 3 to 6 months for the second part to give them some incentive to stay. That would be a consideration, and also that it's large enough to have any kind of incentive. If it's just like $100, most time that doesn't make much impact. I've seen like a lot of the fast food chains are doing like $1,000 signups, but it all depends on what you can afford.
Great. Well, I don't see any other questions. There were some comments and some things in the chat. I did ask you what your biggest fear was, and a couple of you responded. Biggest fear is getting product held up in production. So supply chain issues, which were and continue to be a big issue for a lot of businesses. And then also volunteers and staff getting COVID-19. Yes, I can see that could be a fear too. Employees and customers even. So, okay, so that was kind of added to that. I don't see any other questions in there. So join us next week. Next week we have with us Jeff Simpson, the Economic Development Manager of Mono County. And rumor has it we'll be in Mono County, unless, of course, there's more smoke or a fire or another earthquake. I doubt if there'll be a flash flood, but it's possible. Monsoon weather in August. So Celeste, great having you on again. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're no longer shy also. This is 2 weeks in a row. You've had a very shy guest speaker, so.
Well, I didn't notice my picture wasn't there. I thought you hadn't turned it on, and then I realized it was me. So
I would never do that.
2 years of Zoom, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah, okay. So we still will be next year too. So thanks again for joining us. I'm Kelly Bearden for Celeste Young-Ramos, and we'll be back next week with number 76. Take care, everybody.